Whenever you're down, out in the cold, faithless and dark, your story's untold. Come take my hand and walk there with me. I know a place where we can be free. There is a light shining for you, guiding your way, helping you through. And shadows and gloom are all that you see. We'll find a place where we can be free. From the mountaintop down to the deepest valley, hear a voice calling you. It's the rising sun shining in the darkest valley. Can't you see you will be free? I have been far, I have been wide, searching for peace, somewhere to hide. Now I am free, open and pure, fearless and bare. I am secure. There is no dark that can't be lit. We'll find a way if we just commit. We are one. There is no them and us. Together we're strong. Together we're free. From the mountaintop down to the deepest valley, hear a voice calling you. It's the rising sun shining in the darkest valley. Can't you see you will be free? Can't you see you will be free? You will be free.
Okay, good morning, you guys. So last week we did section 2 of AR 735-5. Now today we're gonna do section 3, you guys. It's the review by approval authority. Before we get started, make sure you guys like the video. Make sure you guys are subscribing to the channel. Like I said, I do this every Sunday at 8 a.m. around 8 a.m. Basically just read the regulation for supply sergeants, you guys. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. So 11-10, approving authority review of financial investigations of property losses. The approving authority will personally review all FLIPL arising within their command or authority. The exception involves FLIPL listing property for which the approving authority has either personal responsibility or accountability. In this instance, the next higher command activity supervisor will act as the approving authority. The approving authority will make an administrative check to determine if all pertinent instructions have been followed. DA Form 7531 provides the checklist and tracking document. Using section G within the checklist and tracking document, the approving authority will further check to ensure the investigation resolves contradictory statements, confirms or refutes self-serving statements, reflects clearly stated findings from documented evidence, presents sound and logical conclusions and recommendations based on the findings and the policy contained in this pamphlet. Reflects individuals receive counseling, advisement of their rights, and the opportunity to rebuke on their behalf. Reflects correct computation of financial charges. If late, contains statements of delay attached as exhibits. Reflects initials on all changes and minor corrections that support authenticity and clear doubt. Reflects an unbiased investigation. Approving authority 11-11. Approving authority's action after review of financial investigations of property losses. Chapter 5 describes the financial liability investigation process steps from decision by approving authority to receipt by finance. When the approving authority determines the financial liability investigation or 15-6 investigation is incomplete or finds pertinent instructions have not been complied with, the official will return the flipper to the financial liability officer or AR 15-6 investigating officer for further investigation. If an appointing authority was designed, the approving authority will return the flipper through the appointing authority. The approving authority will specify the additional data required using a memorandum. A financial liability officer may be relieved by the approving authority and a new financial liability officer appointed per 6-9. When the approving authority determines the flipper is complete, the approving authority will adopt the recommendations of the financial liability officer or 15-6 investigating officer and approve them by the following procedures in paragraph 11-11E, or will decide contrary to the recommendations of the financial liability officer or 15-6 investigating officer to relieve all concern from financial liability, to assess financial liability against a new individual or waive or reduce the amount of financial liability assessed against an individual. When the approving authority decision is to relieve or waive financial responsibility, the respondent will be notified using a memorandum, see Chapter 10, or can overrule when appropriate the recommendations of the appointing authority and the financial liability officer. So I just want to pause there so you guys get that point right there. So that point saying the approving authority can overrule when appropriate the recommendations of the appointing authority and the flow, you guys. When his action results in the assessment of financial liability, the individual is not previously recommended for liability will be advised in writing of their rights and afforded an opportunity to exercise their rights. The approving authority adopts the recommendations of the financial liability officer or AR 15-6 investigating officer and approves them by checking approved in DD Form 200, Block 14A, and inserting a statement in Block 14B to assess financial liability against an individual. Use a statement similar to the following: approved to hold rank and name financial liability in the amount entered in Block 15D. Also enter the respondent's rank or grade, last name, and basic pay at the time of loss or damage, and complete Blocks 14B through 14H. When the approving authority decides to approve collective and individual liability against two or more individuals, additional actions to those outlined in paragraph 11-11E are taken. Since the data in Block 16A through 16G allows only one individual to sign, it is necessary to prepare a continuation sheet. Using the continuation sheet, enter a statement similar to the statement described in paragraph 11-11E, identifying each individual being held financially liable and the amount of financial liability being charged. When the approving authority decides to relieve all concern for financial liability, he or she will check Block 14A, approve, and make the following statement in Block B. All concern are relieved from financial liability for the loss or damage of the property listed on DD Form 200. The approving authority will then complete Blocks 14D through 14H. To grant a waiver relieving all concern of financial liability, place the following statement in Block 14B. I relieve all concern of financial liability from the damage, loss, or destruction to the property listed in Blocks 4 through 6. To reduce the amount of financial liability assets, place the following statement in 14B. To hold name and grade of individual being assessed with financial liability in the amount of dollar amount. Also enter respondent's rank or grade, last name, and basic pay at the time of loss or damage. The approving authority will clearly state the facts that justify waiving any or all financial liability in Block 14B. comment rationale or on a separate memorandum for record. If a separate memorandum is used, add the statement, see statement memorandum for rationale of financial liability waiver in block 14B, comments rationale. When the approving authority decides to relieve all concerned persons from financial liability, the approving authority will retain the original flipper on file according to document retention instructions per AR 25-400-2 and escrow the remaining copies. When the approving authority determines to assess financial liability, the approving authority will retain the original copy, send a copy to finance, and provide each respondent with a copy. For National Guard, all investigation will then be forwarded to the USPFO, who will serve as the final reviewing authority. The final reviewing authority cannot be delegated to other than the USPFO. In cases of personal conflict, general officer, or state liability, the final reviewing authority is the Air National Guard designated representative, who also acts as the appointing and approving authority. Respondent actions. When an individual has been notified that financial liability has been approved, the individual will, with the advice of legal counsel if desired, thoroughly review the FIPL packet provided and then decide whether or not to take one of the following actions. Request reconsideration of the approving authority decision. Submit packets for reconsideration by memorandum through their immediate commander, supervisor to the approving authority. Only submit requests for reconsideration on the basis of legal error. The reconsideration will set forth in detail any new evidence offered and provide rationale why financial liability is not appropriate. Information already presented in the rebuttal would not be reconsidered. A request for reconsideration stops all collection action pending a decision by the approving authority or the appeal authority. When the approving authority does not reverse their original decision to approve financial liability, the request for reconsideration becomes an appeal, which is forwarded to the appeal authority by the approving authority. Submit a request for a hearing. These are civilian employees only. Request a hearing concerning the amount of the debt or the terms of the proposed repayment schedule. Respondents choosing to submit a request for a hearing must first submit a request for reconsideration through the approving authority to the appeal authority. A request for hearing is submitted by the memorandum through the respondent's immediate commander or supervisor to the servicing finance office, where arrangements for a hearing are made. The request for a hearing will set forth in detail any new evidence offered and explain why the individuals believe the amount of the debt is incorrect or why the proposed repayment schedule should be changed. A request for a hearing stops all collection action pending a decision of the individual conducting the hearing. Request remission or cancellation of indebtedness under provisions AR 600-4. Request extension of the collection period. Submit an application DD Form 149 to the ABCMR under the provision AR 15-185 once the final action from the appeal authority has been received. A request for reconsideration or hearing is processed only if received within the time prescribed in Chapter 12 unless the individual can show good cause for failing to take one of the actions described in paragraphs 11-12A through 11-12A5 within the time prescribed. Request for reconsideration. Upon a request for reconsideration, the approving authority will review any new evidence offered and decide to either reverse the previous decision assessing financial liability against the individual or recommend the continuation of the assessment of financial liability. The approving authority will review a request for reconsideration only based on legal error. That is, the request must establish that the fact of the case, including any new facts provided in the request for reconsideration, do not support an assessment of financial liability. Relief. When the approving authority determines from new evidence that the individual is relieved from financial liability, the approving authority will notify the individual of relief from the assessment of financial liability by memorandum delivered by hand or certified mail with return receipt requested. Retain the new evidence with the flipper and file. In some cases, the approving authority will notify the individual they have reduced the amount of liability. Continuation of financial liability. When the approving authority determines that the assessment of financial liability is continued, the approving authority will prepare and sign a memorandum addressing paragraph 11-2 to the appeal authority. The approving authority is not authorized to allow a person to sign on their behalf. The approving authority may use electronic signature when the memorandum is electronically produced. The memorandum will give the basis for denying the requested relief. The memorandum will show the dollar amount of financial liability assessed. If estimated costs were initially used, include the actual cost in the memorandum if available. Enclose the original flipper and all exhibits to the memorandum. When the original flipper is not available, the approval authority will include a statement in the memorandum explaining why the file is not available. The appeal authority determines liability, reviews the packet and makes a determination, prepares and signs the memorandum, notification to the individual. On receipt of a response from the appeal authority concerning the relief or continuation of the assessment of financial liability, the approving authority will notify the individual by memorandum. The memorandum is delivered by hand or certified mail with return receipt requested. When financial liability is continued, the approving authority will notify the individual that he or she has the right to request a hearing, request a remission or cancellation of indebtedness, request an extension of the collection period, submit a DD Form 149 application to the ABCMR. Request for hearing. These are for civilian employees only. Prior to requesting a hearing, the individual is required to submit a request for reconsideration to the approving authority. The approving authority will not arrange or conduct a hearing. When the appeal authority denies a request for consideration, GA civilian only may request a hearing through their servicing finance office as appropriate. The finance office will forward the petition to the hearing to the activity supervisor, Defense Finance and Accounting Service, Indianapolis Center, Department 80, Indianapolis, Indiana. Remission or cancellation of indebtedness, enlisted personnel only. When financial liability assessed through a FIBL causes financial hardship on an enlisted soldier, he or she may submit a DD Form 3505 application for remission or cancellation of indebtedness. For remission or cancellation of indebtedness through their commander, Purse AR 600-4, submit a copy of the approved FIBL assessing financial liability with the application. A request for remission or cancellation of indebtedness can be submitted at any time an individual is notified they are found financially liable during the process. Request for extension of the collection period. For request for extension of the collection period through approving authority to the Servicing Finance Office for action. Civilian employees who have requested adherence to charter to proposed repayment schedule are not authorized to request an extension of the collection period. The approving authority will make a recommendation regarding extending the collection period using the following factors as the basis for the recommendation. Expenses caused by living standards that are too high or by mishandling of personal funds are not a basis for a hardship determination. So you guys, that was section 3, you guys. Yeah. I hope you guys got some out of that. Next week we'll do section 4, you guys. Basically talking about the appeal authority's review of requests for consideration. Yeah, so you guys got any input on this information, just comment, that's all I got today for you guys, man. I'll see you guys next week.
Whenever you're down, out in the cold, faithless and dark, your story's untold. Come take my hand and walk there with me. I know a place where we can be free. There is a light shining for you, guiding your way, helping you through. And shadows and gloom are all that you see. We'll find a place where we can be free. From the mountain top